All right, so we know that there are five essential components in a PBEL. And when we look a little closer at each of these components, what we see is that language is threaded throughout. All right, so we're going to see language in our inquiry. So in inquiry, students are going out, they're gathering information. They might use the language of paraphrasing to pull information from sources, or the language of summarizing to share that information with somebody else. In solution development and sharing, we're asking our students to pull information together, maybe to synthesize or analyze, and then to share it. And sharing is going to be oral or written, and there's lots of language skills embedded in that. We're going to be collaborating throughout all of these pieces, and collaboration is all about language, expanding on one another's ideas, supporting our ideas with evidence, asking questions to one another, paraphrasing one another's thoughts to show that we're listening to them. All right. And so language is everywhere in a PBEL, and we want to make sure that we're really targeted with what specific language we are focusing on. So we're going to look at two different ways to address language in a PBEL. We're going to look at discipline-specific discourse and language skills. And today's focus is going to be discipline-specific discourse. So in your PBEL, you're going to ask yourself, who do I want my students to be? Do I want my students to be scientists? Are they going to be scientists and they're going to study and research and then give you a scientific solution to a problem like climate change? Do I want my students to be engineers? Are they going to design a solution to something? Maybe they're making a more efficient car or a structure that can withstand a tornado. Are they researchers? Are they going out, just like we do in the education field, and gathering lots of information and presenting a researcher solution to a problem? Or are they mathematicians? Are they utilizing their mathematical skills in order to solve a math-related problem? All right, so whoever we ask them to be, whether it's mathematicians or scientists or engineers, they're going to have to speak in a certain way. And we call that discipline-specific discourse. So discipline-specific discourse is how members of a discipline, mathematicians, engineers, scientists, it's how they talk to one another, the words that they use, the phrases that they use. It's how they write, and how they construct knowledge together. All right. It sounds different than the way we talk in our normal lives or for our kids out on the playground. And it must be explicitly taught. And here's what I mean by that. We are all a part of the discipline of education. So we're all educators, and we speak in a certain way. If I were to try to go to an engineer's meeting, it would be very difficult for me to meaningfully contribute to their conversations because I just don't know the lingo. I don't know the way they approach their problems and their issues. And the same in reverse. If an engineer tried to come to a IEP meeting, they would not be successful. They would have no idea what the acronyms meant. They wouldn't understand the way that we talk about and address the problems that we do in education. All right, so we're going to ask our students to take on the role of a scientist or the role of a mathematician, and we're going to ask them to speak in a certain way and to construct knowledge in a certain way. One tool that we're going to use to help us plan for that in a meaningful way is called the Academic Language Function Toolkit. I Teach ELLs did not create this toolkit. This toolkit is amazing. It's from a high school district in Georgia. And you're going to see this linked down a little bit further in the module. In this toolkit, this high school district has just pulled together a lot of different language functions. So informing, evaluation, categorizing. And then what they've done is they have put together resources to help an educator plan for that language function. You're going to see sentence stems like the ones we see in blue. Keep in mind that this is a high school document, so you're going to see a lot of sentence stems. I've had kindergarten teachers teachers still use this toolkit, and instead of having all of these sentence stems, they might modify one or two of them. And so, for example, I've seen teachers use the sentence stems, I wonder, for the language of inquiry, and just that sentence stem. Totally depends on our grade level and where our students are at. You're going to see example graphic organizers like the KWL chart in the bottom right-hand corner. Those graphic organizers are going to promote this language function. So if I want my students to use the language of inquiry, this could be a graphic organizer I could use to help them do that. You're going to see keywords, strategies. So strategies are collaborative activities students can do that would promote this language function. So this is a great toolkit for planning and will definitely help us in our PBELL. All right, in a moment, as you go through the module, you are going to be asked to take part in a collaboration. When you get to that collaboration, you're going to see a bunch of disciplines, all right? So these are roles that we might ask our students to take on in a PBELL. So in a PBELL, I might want my students to be historians, and that would really work particularly well if you had a COVID-19 focused PBELL. I might ask my students to study a history of another pandemic, maybe the Spanish flu, and then use what they have learned to help us propose some solutions for our current pandemic. And here's how we're going to do this activity. So we're just going to brainstorm language functions that a historian might use. We're going to use this sentence stem to do it. If I asked my students to be a historian, they might use the language function of maybe cause and effect. Historians look at certain events or choices that governments or people have made, and then the effect of those events on other things that have happened in history. They might use the language function of analysis. They're going to look at historical things and analyze all of that and then apply it to something today. They might use the language function of sequencing. History is all about taking events and putting them in order so that we can better understand what has happened, all right? There are lots of language functions that could be used. As you're brainstorming these, you're welcome to use the language toolkit to help you think of language functions, or you can just use your background and understanding of education. All right, so you're going to take part in that collaboration. You're going to choose an image to start with. You're going to think about the discipline that's represented in the picture and then that sentence stem. If I asked my students to be geologists, they might use the language of. I want you to add at least one language function to the shared document and then repeat that 3 times. So do 3 different disciplines and add at least one language function to each. This is a collaborative document with everyone from track 2. So then kind of go through and look at what other educators have said. We're doing this because in our PBELL, we are going to ask our students to take on a discipline. So in our climate change example, I really asked you all to become environmental scientists, and I asked you to use the language of inquiry. And here are some of the ways that we used inquiry. We used it when we were looking at, when we were asking questions about the things that we were learning. We also used it when we were looking at images from the changes from 2009 to 2019. And then we were using it in the way that we were organizing and sharing our information. All right, so as we're going through that, if you have any questions, just send me an email.